Okay, I'm going to do a short video here right quick. This really is not planned, but I've shown all the great things about this 600, and I'm really not afraid to admit my mistakes or my lack of knowledge, to be honest, or even my mistakes. So this thing has been running great for, well, the last time I put a video out about changing out the carb and the oil seal and all that stuff, I've been using it quite a bit. And just recently, maybe a couple weeks ago, started running into a problem. Actually, it was a week ago, now I think about it. A week ago, we had a full day when we were cleaning up our disc golf course, and I drove it to the course, which is a couple miles away, worked it all day long, and drove it home another couple miles. So I got a really big workout one day last weekend. So next day, kind of pulled it out to assess everything, make sure everything was good to go, and I found out it wasn't. So I generally drive it on the street a little bit to just make sure it stays running, it's running nice and healthy and strong, and it wasn't. So kept running out of fuel. Well, the first issue I ran into, now this drove me crazy for about a week, but the first issue I ran into was when I first bought this new carburetor. I bought it, it was cheap Amazon thing, and I wanted to see if it'll solve the problem temporarily. Well, it lasted a lot longer than I thought. It did way better than I thought for a really long period of time. And then last week I basically exposed its first weakness. So here was the first problem that I had, was this gasket, the bowl gasket. I would call it paper thin, but it's thinner than that. It's like really, really thin plastic rubber. I'm not sure what it is. It's just not very thick. And then you can see right here, I don't know if you can see it or not, like I can see it, the bowl has a mark that it left, and it wasn't really catching over here ever, to be honest. It wasn't really centered properly very well. As you can see, I got a lot of overlap over there on the gasket and none over here. So this never was really quite centered, I guess. But what was happening was the bowl was leaking down the side here. So overnight, slowly this thing would just drain itself of fuel. Came out the next morning, the gas tank was empty. So I mean, that gives you clues of what's going on, and a pretty narrow path to go down to look for what's going on here. And so that's the first thing I did. Well, I didn't have anything to really solve the problem quickly. So I actually had a piece of really nice thin leather that I put on there for a day that actually worked, and then because it's porous, it didn't really work after a while. So right now I got a little tiny bitty drip on there, but I just need to tighten this a little tiny bit more. So that fixed that problem. Eventually I ended up going and buying some gasket material and making this gasket, cutting it out, use my X-Acto knife, and I got that to work. Then that meant pulling this. I actually pulled the whole carburetor, which is not a big deal, turned it upside down. I put this all on properly. I cleaned out everything, kind of blew out everything, making sure there wasn't any trash or debris in there. And so in my mind I had fixed that problem. Well, then the next problem started, which was it was running out of gas. So it would run for a few minutes and then it would run out of gas. So I went through that for a couple days. I just couldn't figure out what the heck was going on because I hadn't really changed anything. All I changed was this gasket. Well, I had these black rubber-ish fuel lines on there. These are kind of a standard thing around here. I had this on there, this type of fuel line on there, so I couldn't really see what was going on in the fuel lines. So I had some of this clear tubing that I decided I'd put some clear tubing on there and see if I can't figure out what's going on with this fuel. So the symptoms I had were, right now this fuel line is full, but what was happening was the fuel line wouldn't fill up. It would maybe fill to here, then it would drain down into the carburetor, then it would fill back up to here a little bit. Sometimes it would fill back up and sometimes it would just run out of gas. So then that put me back at the needle valve inside of the bowl wasn't opening, and that was what my assumption was, that well, the needle valve isn't opening or there's a clog in there. So I cleaned this stuff out, pulled off this barb here, cleaned all that stuff out. But then what happened was this fuel line never really filled up, but it would have like little bubbles coming up, little air bubbles coming up. And to me, I feel like I created a situation where I was trapping air in this fuel line and I didn't understand how. I didn't understand why doesn't this fuel line, why doesn't the air come out and vent through the top of the gas cap? Why doesn't it come out through the gas line and come out through this gas cap? So that didn't really lead me anywhere, but what I ended up doing was taking the valve off the bottom of the fuel tank. I checked the inside of the fuel tank. It's very, very, very old, like 1960s, so just in case there wasn't something that I could really monitor inside of there, I used something I've had for a long time. This stuff is very expensive. It's called Red Coat, and basically it relines your gas tanks. This stuff is very expensive now. I've had that for probably 10 years, and if you store it properly for 10 years, it's still good. It kind of runs like a honey inside of the gas tank, and it coats everything. Then you let it dry like 24 hours. Don't let it puddle up or anything in there, or else it won't dry. But anyway, I ended up coating the inside of this tank with some Red Coat to make sure that I wasn't having a bunch of debris come out of the gas tank and going in there and clogging it. So that was my next solution, was maybe I had a clog in the valve, the shutoff valve in the bottom of this gas tank. That wasn't it. So I basically, in order to test that out really, to find out if it was the tank or not, I actually put this temporary tank on there and it did not cause any issues. So I went back to this and figured maybe this is an issue. So I just redid this gas tank and fuel line just to eliminate that from the possibilities of the problems. And again, I was wondering, why isn't that air venting out? Then came back down here, took the carburetor off, turned it upside down, obviously got rid of all the stuff out of there, and the needle valve, the needle inside of here and the bowl, they still look brand new and they look great, but the little tab that the needle connects to is kind of a U-shaped piece of metal, and it's a little bit spring-loaded like that on the top side, and the part where my finger's moving is kind of what the needle attaches to. It slides onto it from the end like this, and then it sits like in the middle, and then it goes up and down. Well, that needed to be adjusted, where I had to bend that little bitty stainless steel piece just a little bit higher or lower. And so what I ended up doing was I ended up taking this bowl off, opening up the fuel line and adjusting it until I got that float. I would open up the float, if fuel would flow. If I closed the float, the fuel would close off. Finally got that right. But it took a couple tries for me to do that. And again, like I said, this has kind of been bugging me for like a week. But I finally got it right, and the final issue was, even though this gasket started the initial issue, it ended up causing a problem with the needle and the float as well. And I don't really understand that per se, but that is exactly what happened. Was this needle valve in here needed to be just slightly adjusted. That little bitty piece of metal that's in there just needed to be bent just a little bit so that the valve was opening and closing properly. Okay, so what I still don't understand, and maybe somebody can correct me on this, I don't really think so, but I've had this system for a long time, like several months, and if you look at this, I don't know if you can even see it in this fuel line, but this fuel line right here, this is a clear fuel line. This fuel line never completely fills up with gas. There's always a pocket of air in the top of it, and that's never been an issue for me ever before. Or maybe it has been the whole time and it's never caused any problems, but because I had black rubber on there I couldn't tell. But like right now, this fuel line is still not full, and I don't understand. I mean, I can understand this needle valve might be closing off the end here, but I figure when that needle valve opens up and this fuel is draining down to the bowl, I feel like this air should be coming out of here and draining, again, venting out through the cap of the gas cap, but it's not doing that. So it's like I've developed a vacuum in there or something, or some kind of trap, an air trap in there, and I don't know why. I just don't understand why this fuel line keeps holding air in it and not just completely filling up with fuel. And maybe somebody does know something. Maybe I've created my own problem here again. I don't know what I did wrong, but I'm hoping that this is never an issue, but I can tell already this fuel line is not full. So what was happening, like I said before, when it was running for a couple minutes, this fuel line would fill up to about right here, and then once it was out of fuel, it ran out. Then I'd shut it off and it would sit a few minutes. Well, that gave time for this fuel line to fill back up slowly, not quickly at all. So if I let it sit for a few minutes, I could drive for a minute and then it would shut down, and then I'd let it sit and then it would fill back up and then it would sit, and then anyway, I went through that cycle many times. So I feel like I might finally be finished with this problem. I got a little tiny crank here. I got a tiny drip because I didn't really tighten this much. I'm always really careful about how much I tighten this bowl down because you can lose the shape of it really easily. And this is not an adjustable piece. This is a fixed nut on the bottom. There's no adjustment on it. So I feel like I probably solved my problems now, but I still don't understand why I've always got air in my fuel line there. Maybe somebody knows something about that I don't know, but let's see if we can't start her up right quickly. There's a couple other things that happened with the tractor I'll talk about too. So this switch went bad. One of these connections internally in this switch went bad, and I was watching it arc one night, so I replaced this switch recently. Let me see if it fires up right quick. Yeah, so everything's good. It's running like a champ. Runs like a champ still. I put the wheel weights on there when I was working at the park last week. I've got the John Deere hubcaps on the front. Actually, those are just dirty. They're really nice and clean and shiny. Those are just John Deere. Long time ago, they used to be chrome hubcaps. So I'm going to shut this down again. It's running really good. That wiggle on the steering wheel is my next project. This is a lot of stuff going on here. That screw's not easily going to come out. It's going to be a whole issue. Anyway, so when I removed the gas tank, I had to tear off the things. I had to basically reattach this gas tank on top. So this is new. I need to trim that piece off of that twist tie. Vinyl zip tie is what I call it. What are a couple other things I've done? So on the wheels, I can't really show it, but the wheels, obviously the bearings on these wheels are included in the actual rim itself. I had a little slippage right and left, so I put in some really thin round shims on that shaft there, and just got this wheel nice and snug so it doesn't have any play this way. And I got those two done before I went and did the work last week. Like I said, I put on the wheel weights. I did a new leather seat. I just made this a couple weeks ago. These are real genuine, really nice leather that I have, and I just make these seat covers, and they last a couple years before they get dried out. If they sit out in the sun, they get exposure, they get dried, and they get crackly. But I actually have a solution for that I've been using, and it's really old stuff that I bought at a recycle store a long time ago, but it's baseball glove conditioner, and it's made basically for leather to keep it soft and subtle. So I actually put this stuff on here and rub it in there really well to keep this stuff soft and pliable. That's something I use often. So that's one other thing I did recently. What else did I do? Oh, I had the PTO on there, the PTO belt on there. I reinstalled the guard that I had off of there for a while because I wasn't using the PTO. So last week at the park, when we have volunteers show up, I like to give them something a little fun to do. So we're doing work out there, but I try to make it a little fun and unique for them. So when we have a new person show up, I like to have them drive the tractor and just get that fun experience of something different that day that they wouldn't have done otherwise. So last week, about maybe a third of the time, I shared tractor duties with a new person who's never driven this before. And it takes a little bit of learning, yes, but it's not too difficult. Anyway, he stretched out the belt really badly. I thought, I kind of know when I have a new driver on this that the belt is in danger, so I always carry an extra one for that purpose. Okay, there goes that flower pot. We had some tornado warnings last night, so we had a lot of bad storms. So I know whenever I have a new driver on here, I might lose a belt and we might have to replace it. So I came home the next day. I want to say the belt is called an A34 or an A4 L360, meaning it's a 36-inch belt. So I put my backup belt on there, which is over here somewhere. I got a set of extra AG tires. I tried to put these AG tires on the 600, but they're so fat that the fenders are in the way. So that's why these are sitting here. But I had a 360 belt in here. It's in here somewhere. Anyway, a 4L 360. And it was just making the drive really choppy. Like when you would go to disengage, when you went to engage the clutch or let off the clutch pedal and engage the drive, it was just really choppy and not smooth at all from neutral to drive. I'm sorry, from the clutch in, clutch out, it was really rough getting that clutch out. It just wasn't a smooth experience. So put the new belt on there, the new 4L 360, and it was still the same. So what was happening was, it felt like, even though I had a new belt on there, it felt like it was already stretched out when I know it wasn't. It was still brand new. So what I did last weekend, and again, I've been running this since last year, since I redid everything. I want to say it was in the spring that I redid everything, maybe a year ago. Everything was good, so it's kind of striking for me to run into an issue on the belt when I never had one before. But I figured I'd address that last weekend. So that belt down there, the drive belt, which is really easily changeable for me, that kept slipping off. So this past weekend, because this is a custom fit engine into this custom arrangement here, I had to raise these mounts 3/16 of an inch, but I only did it on the back side because the front was higher than the back. So I leveled this up with 3/16 spacer in the back and on the other side, and that leveled the engine up, or even tilted it forward a little bit, I'm not sure. But that was in order to make the belt tighter. So I did that, put the 4L 360 back on there, and it was still too sloppy for me, and it would still jump off. So I went back to the store and I bought a 4L 350, which is a 35-inch belt, so 1 inch shorter. And ever since I put that 1 inch shorter belt on there, it's not given me any problems with the belt slipping off or anything. So again, all these problems I kind of created for myself like a year ago, and I've kind of been waiting for them to happen or not happen, and they took a long time to happen. So this whole custom install worked great for a long time, but I'm here a year later making up for a couple issues that I caused. So now I'm running a 35-inch belt on there, and as it relates to the PTO, I'm going to have to run a different size belt on the PTO as well. However, I don't use the PTO a whole lot on the 600. This one's mostly a puller of my trailer, and actually you can see I have my work stuff in there. I had this at work this week, had a bunch of tools in there. But again, my main grass mowing is always my 750 right there. I normally have the wheel weights on it, but I took them off to put them on the 600. But that's my grass mowing mower that I always keep the deck on instead of changing them out all the time. That's the one that I use the PTO on the most. And it's really consistent for that, instead of changing it off and on and going through issues. This one, I don't use the PTO much, so I don't keep a belt on it. But when I do go to put a belt on it, I'm going to need a different size belt than I had before, because I've changed the height of the pulley on the motor, and that was just to satisfy the driving problems and the belt problems. But I guess that's probably all that I've changed. And again, this is all stuff that I kind of created last year when I redid everything and I put a new motor in it. Again, I wouldn't change that decision at all. It's just that I'm running into a couple issues now. Right now, the fuel line is mostly filled up, and I'm actually getting ready to take it for a ride in a few minutes on the street. I don't do that until I feel confident that I can make it back home, because if it gets stuck on the street, you can't just push these home really easily. So I'm gonna tidy this up real quick. I've got a small adjustment. I need to tighten up this bowl just a little bit, and then I'm going to take her for a ride again and see if there's anything going on with it. But I've been pretty happy with it today. It's kind of been okay, but I went through a bunch of issues, and once I get this all situated, I'll put the air cleaner back on there, because once I put this air cleaner on here, it's in the way of working on everything else in the back behind here. So that's why I don't have my air cleaner on there, which is right there. So anyway, I'm just kind of going over some mistakes that I made or issues that I've had because of things that I've done to this. But overall, it's doing really great. And again, there's never a problem that I can't really fix and address pretty quickly. This one kind of stumped me for a week, but I nursed it through the week by just one little quick repair at a time and just kind of working my way through it slowly. This wood is obviously just temporary again, still working really good. I just put some walnut stain on it last week just to give it more life. I still have the original steel hood. I really need to reinforce that and put that back on here, but regardless, I'm still always having to deal with where I'm going to put this gas tank, because ever since I custom did everything, that gas tank has always been the last thing that I worry about, and I don't really have a place for it. So just want to do a quick video on some updates on this. Not a whole lot new going on, but always something to look for. I look at it like an old horse, and you gotta do some maintenance every now and then. Even though she runs great on a daily basis, if you don't keep up with her, she's gonna cause some problems. So everything's good on it. I guess I'm gonna sign out. I'm just kind of looking over again to see if there's anything else that I had to do recently, and the answer is no. Like I said, the next big thing I really need to do is I need to get this steering wheel off of here, and I know that's going to be really tough because that's a flat head when I really want a hex head. That may not ever come out at all. I do have an impact driver that might get that out of there. I'm going to heat it up. I'm going to use some penetrating oil. Same for these nuts and bolts over here, but I need to get that vibration out of the steering wheel, because that's the only real loud thing that's still sticking out. This pedal was vibrating, and I had to put a spacer on the end here to take that slack out of it. I added that shim. It's actually a washer, but it's also a shim. It's really thin, so I spaced that out properly to where that's not a wiggly noise anymore. I probably could use a couple grommets on there, or whatever those flanges are. I think they're like nylon flanges or something, plastic. Yep, so other than that, I think she's good to go. The lights are all still good. Seat covers, newish. Yep, everything else is functioning normally. Alright, I'm gonna head out. Actually, you know what? I did have the snow blade on this winter, but we didn't have a lot of snow. So the snow blade... Wait, no, hold on. Let me think about that. I had the snow blade on the 750. I did not have the snow blade on this one this year. But anyway, yep, so that's about it. Alright, I'm going to sign out, and that's just an update on the 600. If I find out that I haven't fixed this problem, I'll come back and I'll let people know what my solution was. But really the only answer I'm looking for at this point is why I can't ever get this air out of my fuel line here. And it's, like I said, I don't think it's ever been an issue for me till now, and I don't know what I'm doing to create that issue when I'm not really doing anything differently than I've done before. But we'll see, and I'll come back if I have any updates on that. Okay, signing out.